Uncle Billy here. Part two of influencers. Just exploring the idea of influencers. What are influencers? Who are the influencers? What are they trying to influence? Who are they influencing? Are you influenced? Who are you influenced by? I have many questions and maybe some answers or some, you know, some conjectures, I guess. I got notes this time. I don't know if I'm organized enough for them to be any use for me or I go off on rabbit trails, but we'll give it a try. Uh, Influencers start back a long time ago. People need to be influenced. It's what a tribe is. It's what a culture is. People have something that they imitate, some hero, some great warrior, some great wise man. And that all goes into their culture, and sometimes it's written down. And when they are raised up, they study it, and you preserve your culture, and your culture grows. It's got to be influence, and you have to influence people. Otherwise, we're just atoms. It's atomized individuals and nothing but individuals. People get together and form a culture, it becomes powerful. A culture that doesn't want to play fair can really ravage individuals and absorb them or do away with them and take their resources. So cultures are important. Christianity has influencers. The saints are all living in imitation of Christ, supposedly. I guess they did. So they put icons of these saints. And then, of course, you're supposed to live in imitation of Christ. You're supposed to imitate God made man to show you how to be, show you how he is. That made Christendom. All the modern Western European nations were Christian kingdoms. In theory, of course, they weren't perfect, but the structure was based on the Christian church. Universities all came out of it. We were taught, Galileo said he discovered that the sun doesn't go around the earth goes around the sun, and so they put him in jail, those religious people. The church established the universities, and Galileo taught at the universities. He got his salary from them, and he taught whatever he wanted. And he started getting away from the tradition and coming up with new ideas that hadn't been peer reviewed. It gave them pause, and they didn't execute him. They didn't put him in jail. They called him in to give an account of himself, and they eventually let him teach it. All it was is a change of perspective, but it was a new thing. The perspective from the earth, switching it to above the North Pole of the sun to view how the solar system works. Or on the earth, it's perfectly logical to have a perspective from the earth, and from the earth the sun does revolve around it. You can make a model with the sun on the fulcrum, and that's the modern view. Or you can make a model, pick it up and move it over, put the earth on the fulcrum, and have the exact same scenario, the exact same mechanics. Nothing's changed except the perspective. So these people would argue about, well, you think the sun revolves around the earth. It's a straw man argument. It doesn't exist. There's no fixed point in space. But people were influenced by it. Try to get back on track here, I'm sorry. But people in a Christian society lived in imitation of Christ. They are brought up to believe that there's a heavenly Father that watches everything they do. They should walk in integrity and not try to cheat. Anything they do is woven into the warp and womb of the universe, God's mind. You don't get away with anything, so you should walk uprightly. Living in such a society, it can be pleasant. It's good for people. You can say what you want about it. People have been trying to tear it down for years. Other influencers. Influencers that sneak in. The church is flawed. There's all kinds of corruption. It's been building for a long time, but when you have cultures and nations, powerful nations built on the church, that's where the power is. Well, if you want some power, you're going to have to play the game and get in there and then start warping things. Yeah, it's been going on a long time. your influencers were writers and teachers, the church. Literature took off. They invented the printing press. They probably had it a long time before they invented it, but whatever. People read. I believe it was in the 1840s. Goethe, Johann von Goethe, he wrote, oh no, that's not right. Anyway, Goethe, the guy that did Mephistopheles, he wrote a book called The Sorrows of Young Werther. And that was a very popular novel. It was about this rich nobleman that has an existential crisis, and he winds up becoming a nihilist and killing himself. Well, after that, there was a rash of suicides among rich noblemen. They were imitating it. They got something from the novel and decided to become nihilists and symbolically kill themselves to make a statement. Yeah, happy campers, I guess. Dostoevsky examined that a few decades later. He has a quote that really struck me as one of the most awesome quotes in the world, but I can't find it anywhere. I've read everything I could ever find of Dostoevsky. I've read his unfinished works. I've read his early works. I've read all his books. I know Dostoevsky. I've read a couple of them three times at least. I've studied them, and I've read biographies and everything. I read his writer's diary, which is kind of like an autobiography. That quote is somewhere, but I can't find it. I tried Googling it. I tried everything. But here's a quote. Maybe some of you know where it came from. Literary archetypes become historical reality through the links of the people that read or hear about the archetypes and act upon it, are influenced by it. Influence? I don't know if he knew about the statistics of suicide in Central Europe after Goethe's novel, Young Werther. He probably did. He's a very educated man. But that struck me, that quote. Literary archetype, something that's made up, something that's refined, something that's thought about, a composite of certain types of people, becomes a historical reality because of, people that hear about it. Npcs, maybe? I don't know. People that are easily influenced are looking for something to grab onto to make themselves something that's easy, something that's sweet. They'll eat a shit sandwich if you put sugar in it. But anyway, I was really struck by that quote. Dostoevsky was a good influencer. He didn't, I don't think, trigger anybody to kill himself. He wrote about nihilists in his book Demons. He wrote briefly about it in other ones. He had some nihilists as characters. I think Hippolyte, and The Idiot was one of them. He wanted to symbolically kill himself. He just wanted attention. Of course, he botched the job. He ridiculed nihilists. I don't know which way to pronounce it. I like nihilists, so I'll do it that way, even if it's wrong. You know what I'm talking about. Just roll with it. But in Demons, there were a bunch of them. I mean, it was a whole organization. It's different translations of the title of the book. I think some of it was Demons is pretty good, I guess. It's like political nihilists. Do those exist today? Oh yeah. They're cultivated by the powers that be through influencers. They become historical reality through influencers. Look at the biker phenomenon. I was an outlaw biker. I was influenced by it. They had the first biker movie that came out in the early 50s, The Wild One, with Marlon Brando and who was it? George Kennedy? Was that him? Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. Anyway, it was a pretty nice flick. All these crazy hoodlums running around on their motorcycles and terrorizing a small town. Didn't happen. It was loosely based on the Hollister event. Hollister event didn't really happen like they said it did. The media took it and sexed it up and ran with it. It wasn't really at all what happened. I met a guy that was there. Wino Willie, the founder of the Booze Fighters, which was the club involved in the original thing. The Booze Fighters were restarted by some people. Well, actually, a friend of mine in Central Texas had joined it, and I went to one of their meetings. But anyway, people started imitating that when they saw the movie, and like it fermented and cooked and developed, and then by the mid 60s you got these Hells Angels, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. You see that on the movies, you think, wow, that looks like fun, I want to do that, and you do it. I did. It's not without its problems. The funny thing is, it just continues to morph and continues to change. The first time I went to Sturgis, I encountered yuppie bikers because it became popular to a different set of people, not your blue collar Grabowski, bar brawler type guys. Now it's appealing to doctors and lawyers and Wall Street managers, and they want to dress up and LARP as bikers. But it's kind of different. It's sanitized. I rode from Houston up to Sturgis. I stopped, I think, twice. It poured rain from the Oklahoma state line all the way to Nebraska. And I stopped a couple of times for a few hours at rest areas. But I pretty much was, rode straight through. And I had no front fender. I had an old shovel with drag bars. So I'm sitting like this. Well, I looked freaking cool, but my neck was sore for about 2 years. And I got there, and I just looked like a raccoon. I stopped in Rapid City, and I took off my glasses, and I had a white band around here, and the rest of me was just filthy. It looked like I crawled out of a sewer. And then I looked up, and there's these trailers being pulled in by brand new trucks, and they're loading their brand new motorcycles off their brand new trailers in Rapid City. They got New York plates, Michigan plates, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and they're pulling up and putting on their new leathers and getting their new bikes out, and then they're ready, man. They're like Rapid City, what's that, like 30 miles from Sturgis? Yeah. Outlaws, and they're wobbling on their bikes and dragging their feet. I had a lot of fun. I trolled those guys big time. But it doesn't work on them. It's like, oh, that dirty guy. Look at that homemade motorcycle. It's not an official licensed Harley product. So the biker scene changed a lot. The organic was replaced by the synthetic. But then it's always been synthetic. It was something that was contrived by the media. People latched onto it voluntarily. But then it morphed into something that was so stilted and ritualized and expensive. It's not just biker culture. Lots of subcultures have done that. And it's interesting to think about these things. Well, I saw it from the inside firsthand. It's the only reason I know about it. I thought I'd share it. It has something to do with influence. Movies and TV influences now. Dostoevsky said that the literary archetypes become historical reality through the links of, that is, the people that are influenced by it. Yeah, and now you got television and movies, radio, records. Rock stars are big influencers. You think it's organic that somebody practices in their garage and, wow, we got a great sound, man. And they start making quarter tapes and taking them to my dental problem. Quarter track tapes and taking them and knocking on doors and playing small clubs until they get discovered. That happens. Yeah, there's people that made it that way. I don't think a whole lot of them. There's a book out about how the real sausage is made. A lot of these people are put there by publishing companies. Look at the Monkees. Those guys were male models. And they were put together doing songs that I think Neil Sedaka or Paul Simon or somebody wrote, and they were coached. They were given voice lessons. They were taught how to play instruments, and they became a band. But most of them aren't as obvious as that. A lot of them are politically constructed. There's been a book written about that. You can find it. There's a place in California where a bunch of rock stars lived. Manson hung out there, too. Can't think of the name of it. not Lotus Valley, that's not right. Something like that. I'm not going to dwell on trying to remember it. You can find out if you can Google and you can find things. Yeah, it's where all the rock stars lived in the 60s, and or not all of them, but a lot of them, a core of them. And all of them had something in common. A lot of people don't know this. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, who's the Mamas and Papas guy, the front guy for Mamas and Papas, John Phillips. They all had something in common. They were had immediate family members in military intelligence. Did you know that? Especially Morrison. His dad was in naval intelligence. And right at a time where the anti-war movement in the early 60s was really growing legs, they're still sore about Korea. People are asking questions. Why the hell were we there? What did that do? What was that about? And now they're getting in Vietnam? Really? And so articulate, well-dressed college students are starting to form organizations, and they've got a lot of traction with the middle class voters. This is 1964 or so. Somebody had to do something about that, didn't they? Military-industrial complex. Wow. How sweet it is. Anyhow, I think there was a program the FBI did called Counter-Intel Pro. I'm sure there were other programs we don't know about by the CIA and by corporate and military defense contractors. They have their own intelligence agents. They've had their own agencies. But all of a sudden, you didn't get any traction with that anymore. Suddenly, the anti-war movement became hippies, filthy hippies that don't take baths and openly advocate the destruction of the family and taking drugs and communism. Why, people are horrified. Look at these anti-war people. Aren't they terrible? Double down on Vietnam, baby. That's what happened. They still have to get us in, too. John Phillips, they have this story. We were in Puerto Rico doing acid on the beach when we came up with these thongs, man. Well, somebody's looked at the records, and he wasn't in Puerto Rico. He was in Haiti while they were overthrowing Doc Duvalier, or whoever the dictator was at that time, putting a new dictator that was more friendly to the U.S. Yeah, his dad was in military intelligence. Jimi Hendrix was in Cambodia. He was a private in the army for a long time. He never went up in rank, but he was in Cambodia. What's he doing there? You know, there's a book written about it. You can look it up yourself. I've read parts of it and did a lot of digging and see, wow, this makes sense. But the main one is Morrison. You know, his dad was naval intelligence, and suddenly they made him a captain, totally unqualified, youngest captain ever. They gave him an old tub they were going to decommission from World War I destroyer or whatever, and he took it to the Gulf of Tonkin, and it got attacked by the North Vietnamese Navy and sank, and 200 servicemen were killed. Really? That was a press release. I think there was a reward of $100,000 that's been out for a long time. Anybody that can prove that they had a son on that ship that drowned or got killed, they can claim it. Nobody's claimed it. Anyway, Morrison was instantly made into an admiral after that. He's involved in intelligence, yeah? And at the same time, all these influencers are being put together. Abby Hoffman, Wavy Gravy, Ed Sanders. Maybe some of them were useful idiots, but I think most of them were made. They were put in there for a reason and promoted and given, recording contracts. So I can just hear this conversation. The old man is sitting around next to the fireplace and he's talking to somebody on the phone and, Jimmy, get down here! Jimmy! Yes, Father? Little Jimmy comes tumbling down the stairs. What's up, Dad? How'd you like to be a rock star, boy? Gonna be a millionaire. Got it all lined out for you. Okay, Dad. I think that's how it went. A lot. Did he really die in a bathtub in Paris? Maybe. Maybe he just slithered down the drain. I loved the Doors. I thought they were great when I was growing up. I see it for what it is now. I mean, the lyrics are pretty bizarre. They came from somewhere. But, and the music was mesmerizing. That's how these things work. Really, when you look into it, though, it's just vapid and destructive. Destructive, very destructive. I can personally attest to that. But they're influencers. They've lined out all their influencers. How did these people come about? Did they go around knocking on doors, passing out quarter track tapes and playing little clubs? First anybody ever heard of them, they already had a contract. All of a sudden, all the stations in the nation who have people, connected people that tell them what to do, they're like, this is a new sensation. These kids are sweeping the nation. This is great. This is so popular. First time they play it. That's how it works. Promoters and publishers, they're a network, and they do have intelligence people among them. The Yentas back in the 70s, the great rock and roll goddesses that suddenly appeared, like Carly Simon and Melissa Manchester and Carole King. I think Manchester changed her name from something else, from like Levenstein or something like that. Anyway, they're all from the same neighborhood. They went to the same schools. And Carly, well, her dad put the Simon and Schuster, the world's biggest publisher. So I'm sure they were so lucky to have, talent right here in their house. They don't have to go out and look for it. I think Anna Sofka was from that same neighborhood. Melanie. Was Woodstock an operation? I don't know. I don't think so. I knew people that were there. Some of my close friends, they fell in love there. They grew up together in Long Island, and they were in the same class in school, but they never noticed each other until Woodstock. Anyway. And they told me the stories about it. But little Melanie, she wrote a song, I think it was a couple of years after Woodstock, to kind of retell the story as those plucky young people going out there to take a stand against the man and the war and everything, And they were, I think the song was named Candles in the Rain. Some came to sing, some came to pray, some came to chase the dark away. They're holding candles in the rain and protesting against the awful, awful system. They're heroes, they're martyrs, they're saints. Right? I think most of them went there to get really ripped and take drugs and have a grunt in the mud and make beasts of themselves. That's the new sainthood. That's what influencers have wrought. You can be a saint by being self-indulgent and destructive. Think about that. How did that happen? That wasn't what the old saints were all about, like 100 years ago. That wasn't that very long ago. My grandmother graduated high school 120 years, almost 120 years ago. My family has really long spreads into generations. I started having kids when I was 48. My dad was in his late 40s when he had me. His dad, I think, was in the early 50s. My grandmother graduated at 20 years old in 1896. So her generation had real saints that came through the door. Now we have saints that have climbed through the windows and up through the cracks and crawled out from under the cabinet like roaches. That's who the people who are our influencers. Who's influencing you? You get your information and your culture from Netflix? Please. It's powerful, it really is. When I was in Kandahar, they would recruit people all over the country. They would have recruitment operations in the East Coast, West Coast. The congressmen were clamoring for that. Come to my district, we need jobs, And then, so you had all these different people showing up. And I've been there a few years, and all of a sudden they get off the plane, bunch of boys from South Carolina, and whoa, this place is right Tony, ain't it? And then the guys from Jersey show up. I like that. I like meeting people from different places. And one time these guys showed up. I'm going to have lunch at the DFAC, a dining and eating facility, right? I come up, bunch of people standing in line, about 20 of them, and they all look like identical twins. They're all wearing the same thing. They're all, every freaking one of them, young men, they've shaved their heads. They're wearing muscle shirts. They have tribal tattoos. They have 2 silver earrings. They've been bodybuilding, maybe some steroids too. They had some serious guns. You know, and they're standing around like, you know, bobbing their heads around and making this cop face. And all of them were doing that. And they're talking. I hear them talking. And I remember the cadence was like 90s advertisements off MTV, you know. Yeah, we're Kandahar. You know, those are the candidates. All of them talk like that. And I heard they're just, everything they said was so snarky. These guys worship Vin Diesel. They've remade themselves in the image of Vin Diesel. Actually, Vin Diesel's character that he plays on television, he's an actor. He's probably been a model too. He's not like you and I, but these guys are imitating the imagery that he has been paid to contrive on television and in movies. I don't know. What do you think? I find it disturbing, and I was an outlaw biker. I wasn't living in imitation of Marlon Brando's character or even real bikers, you know, that were in the media, like Mother Miles and Sonny Barger and people. I wasn't trying to imitate anybody. I just thought that they had some real fun stuff they were doing, so I want to try that. I'm not trying to act superior, but it's the same system. It's just degenerated even more over the years. Wow, I'm just gabbing here. I'm just rambling. Sorry, let me look at my notes and see how far off I got. Did I forget anything? That's basically some people, I think the majority of people are easily influenced, and you can shape a society to make more. You make the percentage of those people higher. There are some people that are influencers. They have an inner life. Maybe not influencers, but maybe they should be. People that try to get to the bottom of things. They try to live in truth. They try to think about things and come to their own conclusions through their God-given personality. They try to find the logos and then make it their own. And then there's people that just do whatever culture says without thinking about it. Those kind of people, you have to use rhetoric with them. Because if you give them logic and information, it doesn't do any good. I've had friends and they've talked, we gotta go get them damn Russians out of Ukraine. Dude, listen to me. I freaking lived there. Let me tell you what happened. And I go through logical sequence of unequivocally provable facts, like, you know, the Russians and Donbass have been there all the time. They redid the borders back during the Soviet days. They haven't moved. And other facts like that. And, wow, really? Wow, that's pretty cool. And then they go watch television for half an hour, and then you see them on the internet. We gotta get them darn Russians out of Donbass. Are you freaking, are you something wrong with you? No, they're NPCs. They're non-programmable. They have a program, and they're going to stick to it. They're influenced by the influencers that are in the room. And these influencers that have been in the room for the last, 80 years, maybe a little less than that, they didn't come through the door. They got in through the window. They crawled out from under the cabinets. There's a poem, very spiritual poem. A lot of people don't know it. Edgar Allan Poe, and that goes back to the time of the sorrows of young Werner, and just before Dostoevsky. Edgar Allan Poe wrote a poem called The Raven. Everybody knows about it. They think, oh, it's about a talking bird that reminds a guy of his dead wife. Well, that's kind of the low frequency interpretation of it. But there's a emotional and psychological interpretation that's very deep. And there's a spiritual interpretation of it. And the imagery, the symbolism in it, it'll point you right to it. Once upon a midnight dreary, as I sat all weak and weary, pondering many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. Once there came a knocking, it was Vapid. someone entreating entrance in my chamber door. I haven't read it in a long time. I'm going off memory, which is pretty wobbly. 'Tis some late visit. Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and as each dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor, vainly I had sought the morrow, vainly I sought surcease from sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, nameless here forevermore. The tapping comes louder. He says it's not just a wind, it's some visitor, 'tis some late night visitor entreating entrance in my chamber door. Sir or madam, you see, the fact is I had been napping and didn't hear you. Here I open wide the door. Darkness there, nothing more. Just a whispered word, Lenore, and this I whispered, and in darkness echoed back the word Lenore. Long I stood there wondering, fearing, deep into the darkness peering, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. What's that? Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Here we're coming up on the money phase. Heart rapping somewhat louder than before. Surely that is something at my window lattice. Let us see what thereat is in this mystery explore. Open then I flung the shutter, and with many flit and flutter, and there stepped a stately raven from the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, neither stopped nor stayed he, but with mane of lord or lady flew upon the placid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and there it sat and nothing more. The crow, the raven, came in through the window. It didn't come in through the door. And what did it do? It went straight for the bust of Pallas, which is above the chamber door. The chamber is the soul, the heart, the mind. The door is where you let things in. That raven went through the window, and it sat on the bust of Pallas, the Greek goddess of wisdom, Roman Minerva. That crow sat on the head of Pallas, who's guarding the door of the chamber. That crow was an influencer, because it kept saying nevermore when he talked. He said he just thought he'd be snarky and say, tell me thy name, what thy lordly name is on this night's Plutonian shore. Croaked the raven, nevermore. He was startled by that. He's been pining for his lost Lenore. I need to look up Lenore and see what that means. That's probably very symbolic too. Who's Lenore? His girlfriend? Probably something much deeper than that. Because the whole spiritual meaning of the poem, it's about doubt, how doubt comes in. Tell the soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aden it will clasp a sainted maiden who the angels call Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. The doubt is gnawing away at his faith and his belief in the afterlife. And the doubt came in through the window. The television, the movies, the advertisements. People put them there. People chisel away and put them in there. They put their little eggs in there, and then they hatch and they crawl out from under your cabinets. Nice imagery, right? And I'm being an influencer too. Can I be an influencer? Fauci's an influencer. Really? What kind of influencer is he? Well, he's official. He's an authority, right? They've influenced a lot of people. Fauci encouraged AIDS patients to go get ATZ therapy. ATZ was a cancer treatment that they had to get rid of because it killed everybody that took it. What are you going to do with all this stuff? You got some money invested in it. You got to get a return. It's a corporate decision. So, he convinced them that it'll treat AIDS. Well, yeah, you can cure AIDS with it. You could, like you could with a bullet. Everybody that took it died. Freddie Mercury went and got that treatment, and he died. Magic Johnson had AIDS. Do you remember that? Oh, that's all him. That was back in the 80s, if I remember correctly. But he said, I ain't doing that. I got money. I'm going to hire a nutritionist and a homeopath, and I'm going to quit. AIDS is a lifestyle disease. A lot of the people that got it were just cranking on mixed drinks and Coke and just eating celery sticks and carrots and having lots of enemas. And I mean, that's their lifestyle. I've talked to these people and I've read their books. They did things like that, and it's very unhealthy. And so is the other activity that they're in. And they won't quit. They can't quit. They're consumed with it. But if they just quit and eat right and take care of themselves, they would have recovered. Magic Johnson did. He's still with us. You know, sometimes the brothers really get it. They really get it. Got respect for them. But they were influenced. Everybody's influenced. Boy, this is getting so far off course. It's ridiculous. I need to be more disciplined. Or do I? You like this? Yeah, tell me. I'll keep going. Let me see here. Well, dead airspace. That's okay. Take a little time and ruminate about what I just said, and I'll read this for good or for ill. Those are some good points, and I just forgot all about them. Training. Moderns confuse training with education. They substituted education with training. They put training. You're getting trained. Training is what you do to animals. You can train animals. You can train a freaking monkey to do some very complex tasks. Or a raven. They're very smart. Dogs, you train them. Just like Pavlov, you condition them. Use their natural instincts to get them to do what you want them to. Now, education is different. When you teach somebody real education, like the trivium, then you're teaching them an effective and accepted way in your culture to interface with your culture and with your grammar and interface with reality. And then logic, your interface with the reality. You're understanding the structure of how things work. Things that are not abstract or subjective. There are some things that are just unequivocally true, and that's logic. 1 + 1 = 2. Now you can go about finding 1 + 1 = 2 by understanding how math works, or you can have an instructor take you through this complex 6-mile-long formula to get to the answer by following instructions. They've perverted education and turned it into training because they don't want you to be educated, because if you're educated, then you figure things out and you can become somebody who is charismatic and who can use rhetoric to influence other people. You can become an influence because grammar, logic, rhetoric. Rhetoric is for influencing people. And to influence NPCs, you have to use rhetoric. Now, you can use logic. Like I was talking about, when I told people about my experience of the Ukraine and they just watched television and went back to their old opinion. You can't influence them with logic and reason. You can't influence them by showing them actual unequivocal truths and adding them up, and it has no effect. They're NPCs. You have to use rhetoric. You have to use emotionally charged words, and not lying. It's not deception or lying. You're using these things, these rhetorical devices, to get people's attention and snap them out of it. And there's a skill to it. There's people that are very good at it. I've known such people. It's a beautiful thing when you see people snap out of it and understand what they need to do and do it. And I've seen lives changed, absolutely radically changed. At a party, at an outlaw motorcycle run, out on the street, it happens. And I'm not talking about going through the Roman road of salvation because you are a sinner and you're a loser. If you're a sinner, you need to join us and you can be saved and go to my church and do what I tell you to and give me money. That's not what I'm talking about. That's another trick. Churches are influencers. I don't think I've told this story. I got a million of them. I've seen this stuff. My wife is Russian. I took her to America in 2008. She really didn't like it. But I was in Houston and I introduced her to some Russian people. I tried to find some friends for her and stuff for her to do so she'd be happy and comfortable. And I met a girl who had produced a movie. She was married to a Russian man, and were having a showing of their what do they call it, a screening of their movie in one of the old theaters in Houston, and they had the whole bunch of people from the Russian community going there, and I went to see that movie. It was in English. It was called Sergei. Forgive me, Sergei. Forgive me, Sergei. A Soviet sailor on a merchant ship got blown. The ship got blown close to the coast of. It got blown close to the coast of Canada, close to the coast of Canada, in a storm. And he was close enough. He said, "I can make this." He was an athlete and a good swimmer. He jumped overboard, supposedly, and swam to shore and defected. And it was in Canada, so, the strong, independent Canadian government, of course, called the American CIA and had them come up and debrief him. And they turned him over to a Canadian evangelist. I can use this man. First we get him saved. Then we have him give his testimony. And, of course, his testimony is the horrors of living in the Soviet Union. Well, I live here and I see very little evidence of a lot of the stuff that they said. It wasn't that bad. Anyway, Sergei ended up writing a book. Yeah, so he had a ghostwriter. Then the book talked about how he was a KGB cadet and they went around beating up Christians and breaking up home churches. Well, this would have been in the 60s, right? No, that stuff did. No, really. Anyway, this girl was deeply influenced by his book. Dude ended up doing himself, man. Those Russians, he got drunk on vodka with some girl in a hotel and he played Russian roulette with his pistol he carried around because he's being taken around and exhibited at all these churches like a monkey in a zoo and given this testimony, which apparently wasn't true. It kind of gets to you. I've known people that had that happen to them. I knew a dude that was in the biker world and he got into the big show business Christian organizations and being around and giving his testimony, and then he ended up killing himself too. Just saying. Anyway, this girl decided to do a documentary and she went into it wholeheartedly thinking, I'll go visit his village and just, film all this stuff and just add something to his book. And she went there and she found out that every bit of it was bald-faced lies. He was raised in an orphanage where the woman who ran the place, Big Arena, used to beat him up, and she beat all the kids, and it was awful. And when she went to that, the day she showed up happened to be Big Arena's birthday. And all the people that were still alive and around that had been through that orphanage were there to honor her, and they loved her, and they thought she was great, and they were having a party for her. And she told them about what was in the book, and they're like, "What? No. Why would he say that?" Oh, Russians get it. Yeah. Well, the CIA told him to say that, so he could make money. And they forgave him for it. They're like, well, that's what he had to do, whatever. Russians are like that. And then she went and she found the KGB captain, where he was a cadet. They didn't go around beating up Christians. What the hell is he doing? Oh, I know. They told him to say that, and you get money. Oh, whatever. And she found some Christians in those villages. Did the KGB beat you guys up? No. There was persecution. I mean, you couldn't get in the Communist Party, and if you couldn't get in a party, you'd have trouble getting good jobs, and you certainly couldn't have any political power if you were overtly Christian. But how is that different than the U.S. now? Anyway, it was interesting. Then she went to interview the evangelist. I'll tell you his name, Charles Bass, or Charlie Bass. I think it went by Charles Bass. I'm not talking about that little thing you put on your wall. It's the cute fish that sings. Now, this guy is a real dude. He is Charles Bass. He was a great evangelist in Canada back in the 70s. And he was Sergei's minder. And she found him and went to interview him, and she said she was doing a book, about Sergei and trying to add something to it. Oh, he agreed to it. He thought it was great. It was going to be a puff piece, right? So she went to his compound in Puerto Rico. That is so intel special forces, spook. I've known people at compounds in Puerto Rico. No, it's Costa Rica, excuse me. Costa Rica, that's where they go. And that's where this guy was. And she went to his compound, and soon as she started asking some mild pointed questions, he went all Kenneth Copeland on her. Security! He called his security. He had security goons, and he had them throw him out of the place. Yeah. That's what Jesus would have done. I've been in mega church circuits. I've known these people. I got a million stories. Some of them are beautiful. But a lot of them, especially the big ones, there's a lot of influence money coming in. There's a lot of, people get a discount on buying an old Air Force base. How do you do that? And you get plastered all over the media all the time, and they get a lot of help because they're influencing people the right way, the correct way. Narrative support. Not Christianity. Oh, there's an element of it in there. They do preach the gospel, and gospel gets preached. It's on a corrupt vehicle, but it's still the gospel, and it does change people and affect people's lives. But if they don't become an NPC member of that church, just doing the bidding of their guy that got them saved, no matter how corrupt he is, no, if they double down and stay with the gospel and the scriptures, and they use logical consistencies and the laws of identity and reason and logic, and also you get talked to in the spirit, like, this is just wrong, man. Some people choke that down because they want to be part of a culture that's flashy. You're not going to stay there very long. You're going to move on and develop it. I did. Anyway, they're influencers, and they're coming in through the windows, not through the door. They don't knock on the door and ask permission. They go for your kids. They're influencing your kids in school, and they want to tamper with their hormones. Some really ugly stuff happening until some people start, helping do something about it. It's the information warfare stage right now. Anyway, that's probably enough. Let me look at my notes one more time and see if I actually talked about anything that I intended to. Okay. Well, we'll just leave it at that. We'll do something else. I might make a part 3 later, but not next time. Next time, I'll probably, unless I'm feeling inspired to do something else, I'll do a character sketch. I want you to meet some of the people I've known. I can't introduce you to them. A lot of them are dead, but I can tell you what I remember about them, and I've known some people that are just diamonds. Diamonds in the rough, maybe, but still brilliant. I knew some people that did all kinds of great things with such elan. People that lived. I'm going to tell you about one of them. I'm going to tell you about Larry. Yeah, that's going to be my next video. I'm going to tell you about Larry. The guy was a magician. He did great things with nothing. And he wasn't the kind of guy you'd think would do that. I didn't even like him when I met him. He was kind of obnoxious, really. He had a really rotten personality until you get to know him. He's a slob. Yeah, he was a lot of fun, though. And he did magic with nothing. There are a lot of people that lives are tremendously physically improved by what that man did. And I'm proud to say I got to be a little part of it. That's what we'll talk about next time. Anyway, Uncle Bilby signing out. Have a nice day. Ciao. Arrivederci. Dipsidania. And all that rot. Bye.